Hi everyone. Today this PowerPoint show tackles chapter number 15, which involves a number of aspects, including directions, instructions, suggestions, order of modifiers, and more about noun clauses. The first part, we are going to talk about directions, instructions, and requests. Directions are usually used by people who want to give commands, orders, and directions without mitigating them. They're all usually they are somehow similar to instructions in a way that you don't need to mitigate them, particularly when you are writing the steps of doing a recipe, for instance, in a manual. There are some instructions how to install a program, for instance, and you see that it usually has a sentence in the imperative form, starts with a verb and without any subject. For example, when somebody asks you to show them the way to the train station, for example, you will say take the bus number 20 from the main road, or turn right, turn left. Okay, if you want to negate these sentences, you just need to insert don't, okay, at the beginning of the sentence, or maintain the sentence as it is and start with never, in a way that you see that there are two sentences here in this table. Originally, the sentence is play tennis on the beach when it's dark. When you want to prevent somebody from playing tennis when it is dark and on the beach, actually, you would say never play tennis on the beach when it is dark. And similarly, don't play tennis on the beach when it is dark, or you can say don't neglect your teeth in the other one. This is how we negate them. Alright, moving now to requests. Similar to instructions and directions, request also avoids using the subject, in some cases, actually, not all the cases, but the difference is that you need to insert please to make your request milder or more polite, less harsh than commands and instructions. And this is what differentiates requests from directions. For instance, when you say open the door for the guests, if you are doing it in a direct way, without inserting the please, it will be called directives. But when you insert the please at the end of your sentence, it would be considered as a request. And by the way, please can occur at the beginning of the sentence and at the beginning of the sentence, yeah, and at the end of the sentence. For example, you can say open the door for the guests, please, or please open the door for the guests. Okay, but you can't insert it between the subject and the verb. Okay, now moving to let's. Let's, we usually use let's to indicate that we are suggesting something, and usually let's is a polite way of suggesting something to do it with the addressee. For instance, it is an action that involves both you and the addressee. Let's start our class. Let's clean the house. Let's stay at home. All right. And as you see that let's is a contracted form of let as I said, involves both the speaker and the hearer. And but however, we usually use let's in its contracted form. We seldom use it in its full form. Okay, and if you want to negate it, you just need to add not after let's. Let's not, for example, let's not stay outside when it is dark. Let's not tidy up our room in this sentence here in my example. Let's not make the house in a mess. Now, a more formal method of formulating suggestions here, I want you to pay attention for this form, is that when you have a verb and then a noun clause, this noun clause, how do we constitute this noun clause? This noun clause is usually preceded or it follows that. Alright? And the verb in this noun clause is always in the simple form, regardless the tense of the verb in the main or independent clause. What do I mean? For example, let's investigate this sentence. The manager suggests that the employees test for COVID-19. It says that because the verb in this clause, the noun clause here in this sentence, the employees test for COVID-19. Okay, this is the noun clause. The verb in the noun clause is test. And this verb doesn't occur at the same time of speaking of the main verb, the manager suggests. Because it doesn't occur at the same time, that's why it is in its subjective case. Subjective, which is in the simple form of the verb. Alright? And usually it occupies the object position in the clause. The manager is the subject, suggest is the main verb, and all this suggestion is the object in this noun clause. Let's focus on the second sentence. The crisis cell in Iraq urged that the curfew extends until April 19. The crisis cell is the subject, which means خلية الأزمة. Urge is the main verb. That the curfew, now this is the noun clause, the curfew extend until April 19. If you consider this verb, extend, you notice that it is in the simple form verb, which we call subjective. Alright? Different from urged, which is in the past form. And here you can see that it's neither in the past, I mean extend, neither in the past, nor has the third person singular s, because curfew is singular. You can come back to my video, or we can talk in more detail about this case of suggestions in more detail in our lecture. Here we have a number of verbs which take a noun clause object in the subjective case. These verbs include advise, demand, forbid, insist, prefer, propose, recommend, request, require, suggest, and urge. You see there are more verbs, however, the focus in this chapter is on this list of verbs. And you see here I exemplified with a sentence for each verb. And the highlighted part in each sentence is the noun clause. And if you read the first sentence, he advised protesters that they object the governmental policies. You see that there is sort of differences between the British English and American English. Americans, no need to insert should. For example, some speakers, particularly British speakers, they would say they advise the protesters that they should object the governmental policies. However, Americans delete that should, and because our textbook follows the American style, we are following the same style here. I demand that he apologize لاحظوا we didn't say that he apologizes because he is subject. I mean he is singular, and usually the verb after he or she and it is accompanied by third person singular s. But because this suggestion or this noun phrase follows the verb demand, which is in the object position, the verb is in the subjective mood. Subjective, I keep saying subjectives, you see, because I want you to get used on this term. Subjective means that the verb in the simple form. I forbid that you marry her, him, or marry her if you are talking to a man. Same, the noun clause that you marry him in the place of the object. The teachers insist that students work hard. All the object that students work hard. Again, focus on the verb work in the simple form of the verb. Doctors, prefer that patients with the COVID-19 stay at home and get remote advice. Again, patients, that patients with COVID-19, this is all the object. And the same for the other sentences. Now in this part, we are talking about how to change a question into a noun clause. We have 4 types, and each one of them is treated differently. First of all, we have questions that have be as the main verb. For example, where is Nadine? How is Ali? Now, here in this sentence, is the main verb and Nadine is the subject. Alright? The first step is to change this sentence into a noun clause. How? Is because it's preceding the subject in questions, it changes into position into after the subject. The sentence will turn to be where Nadine is. Okay, now we change our question into a noun clause. The second step is to insert it in the object position. We don't know where Nadine is. This is how we change our sentence, which was question, into a noun clause by changing the position of the verb, and here our verb is the verb to be. We change its position into after the subject. And now the whole clause where Nadine is the object of this sentence, and it's the object of the verb no, actually. Second case, if the sentence has auxiliaries يعني الفعل المساعد, and this auxiliary here be is an auxiliary, it is not a main verb. Differently, pay attention for this case. When the auxiliary verb like have, be, and if it has a modal verb, usually this auxiliary will also change its position into after the subject. For example, initially the sentence in the question mode, where is Sally living? You are asking about the place of Sally's living. Then now we are moving it into a subject, into a noun clause. Now what will you do? Is as an auxiliary here, is following the subject. The sentence will be where Sally is living. The third step is when we move it and insert it after a verb. Nobody knows where Sally is living. Now, this is the object of this sentence. Nobody, which is the subject, knows the main verb where Sally is living, this whole clause, noun clause, as the object. The second case is when you have as an auxiliary. What have they studied? This is present perfect. Okay, the auxiliary in this sentence is have, and this is an interrogation form. Now, what we will do? What they have studied. Now, have follows the subject. Again, we are putting it after the verb. Do you have an idea what they have studied? Okay. The third one is when will the patient recover? When the patient will recover. And now, who knows when the patient will recover? Who knows what this sentence is in the exclamation case. The third case is when the question has the auxiliary do. What will we do now? Now, you don't need to move do after the subject. All what you need to do is to delete it from the sentence. However, if it carries an inflection, if do is carrying an inflection, as in our example, how much the surgery cost in this hospital, the inflection is in do is the third person singular as does. Now you delete do and the inflection ending will move into the verb. The sentence will be how much the surgery costs in this hospital. Now the verb costs carries the third person singular as, which is the inflection of do in the earlier case. And the third case is when we insert it after the verb. I wonder how much the surgery cost in this hospital. Right. And then we have the fourth case. In this sentence, when the subject is none. For example, we have many examples of WH words that inquire about the subject. Who will go to the zoo? Now, you don't know. For example, originally if the sentence Ali will go to the zoo, and if the subject is not none, who will go to the zoo? You don't know the subject. And if you want to change it into a noun clause, you don't do anything. All what you need to do is to insert it after the verb, and now it is in the object position. Ali asked who will go to the zoo. Now, in this part of this show, or on this PowerPoint show, we will talk about place and directions indicators. Actually, we don't have only at, on, and in as prepositions which indicate the position or we've got also adverbs, phrases, and other prepositions which are useful in indicating the place and the direction. Here we have the list in this table. The left side indicates the position and the right side indicates the direction. These words are very useful in being creative or in using sentences in different styles. We'll give more sentences in our lecture from this list to see whether we can insert them in different styles. Now let's move to the words that sometimes get confused by people. Sometimes people use these words interchangeably, thinking that they mean the same. However, grammatically they are different, which affects their meaning in the sentence. For example, when you say cross and across, you can't use them interchangeably in the same grammatical sentence because, for example, verb occupy across Cross occupies the position of a verb, and it indicates the action. When you ask somebody to cross the road from zebra crossing اللي هي خطوط العبور. They call it zebra crossing because it is black, white, similar to the zebra. Alright? And if you use across, on the other hand, across is an adverb or preposition which indicates your position or the direction. For instance, when I say, if you go to the main street, the library is across Liverpool. That's okay, Liverpool, that street. So you just want to go across that line or that road. Cross يعني تمشي على هذا الطريق. Okay? Now we have past and past. Past, it indicates again your direction, and now it is like the first, like across, it is an either adverb or preposition. Go past the drugstore. Okay, يعني اعبر الدرugstore. Or we have past, which is the past form of the verb pass, sorry. And in the sentence, Sally passed the drugstore when she was going to the theater. In this sentence, past is the verb, is the main verb of this sentence. If you focus on remind and remember, when I ask somebody to remind me of something, in this case, you will remember something with the help of others. Okay? You will think of something, as I write here, with the help of others. It means somebody else will help you in remembering that thing. Or this, it doesn't have to be a person, it can be a place, it can be a movie, it can be any event which reminds you of something else. Okay? In my sentence here, this place reminds me of the trip I went with my dad before he passes away. On the other hand, remember, when you are thinking of something without any assistance, when you say, I remembered my dad when I passed by this place, it's me who remembered my dad without being assisted by anything else. Or I remember doing my homework when it was 9 o'clock. Did anybody help me? No. After and afterwards. After is a preposition and it introduces time phase or time clauses. For example, when you are talking about the sequence of events, I washed my hair after having dinner. Now I had two events or two actions and I did one after the other, and then I am saying that after having dinner, I washed my hair. However, when you talk about afterwards, this is a time adverb and it means later. And in this sentence, they are used differently. For example, if I come back to my same sentence, I washed my hair, afterwards, I had my dinner. Okay, let me focus on the sentences that I wrote here on my slide, and let's compare the two of them. Sarah went to the city center after she had lunch. Sarah had lunch, full stop. Afterwards, she went to the city center. And that's how we use them differently. And you see that afterwards is a time adverb, whereas after is a preposition. Now, the third part, it could be the fourth part or the third part of this PowerPoint show. We are talking in this part about the order of modifiers. Here in this part, we have two types of modifiers. Some modifiers precede the item or the word which modifies, and others follow the word they modify. And this word they modify, I'm saying here a word because it can be a noun, it can be an adjective, whatever. Okay? A, we have modifiers which precede. And here we have number 1. You want to find an article with the possessive modify the same noun, student. The article before the possessive modifies the possessive. طبعا هنا عن الكتاب I think there's sort of mistake because it needs to be modifies the noun. For example, the possessive or the article the assignment, the article the in this sentence, and we have my assignment in the other sentence. You can't find a sentence which includes both the possessive pronoun with the article. You will have the article, the student's assignment in the sentence. You will have the article, the noun with apostrophe, and then the noun which you are modifying, or the noun which is possessed. Okay? In the second case, they say that the possessive pronoun اللي هو my, yours, ours, hers, usually they modify an apostrophe form possessive. Apostrophe form possessive, it means that roommates in my sentence, students, Simons, it means a noun with the possessive s with the apostrophe اللي هي هاي الكما on the top of the word. And at this point it says that the possessive pronoun your roommates, your possessive noun with apostrophe s, usually the possessive pronoun precedes the apostrophe and then the item which they possess اللي هو assignment. Okay, this is how the order occurs. The pronoun, the possessive, the apostrophe form, and then the possessive, the item which they possess. And in the third case, if you have more than one apostrophe, which means a noun, as I said, which has apostrophe s. If you have more than one, Mr. Smith's, daughters, rooms, furniture, it means that each one of them modifies the word which follows. And my sentence, each modifies the word it precedes. It's the same. I mean that each one of them modifies the word that follows it. Okay, for example, Smith's modifies daughters, and daughters modifies rooms, and rooms modifies furniture. Alright? And the last one, sometimes you have, after the apostrophe, you have numbers. These numbers follow the possessive, and if you have ordinal numbers and cardinal numbers, ordinal numbers, when I talk about first, second, third, tells you the order of the item. And cardinal numbers, when you have 1, 2, 3, 4, here you have all the numbers precede, which means comes before cardinal numbers. Look at my sentence, the students first 3 prizes. In the fifth part, or the fifth point, we have descriptive adjectives. And as you know that an adjective describes a noun. In some instances, you have more than one adjective. But you need to bear in mind that the limit number of adjectives modifying a noun is 3. And the usual order is, they must follow an order. You have the opinion, followed by a size, shape, condition, age, color, origin, and noun. And finally is the noun. And in our lecture, we will give examples of these adjectives when you have more than one adjective and you put them in the order. In addition to that, look at number 6. In some instances, you have nouns which modify other nouns. And in this case, you need to bear in mind that if this noun, which is the head noun that you are intending to modify, if it were preceded by an adjective. Now, the noun which modifies, it is inserted between the adjective and the head noun. Okay? If you look at my chart here, we have adjectives, we have noun modifiers, and then the head noun. With the noun modifiers, again, they need to follow a fixed order. They need to be in the order of material, then operation, power, and then the purpose why you use that item, for instance. Again, we'll give some sentences for this part of the chapter. The other part of modifiers is modifiers that follow. Modifiers follow what? They follow the word they modify. Now we have nouns. Sometimes nouns are post-modified either by adjective phrase, prepositional phrase, or a noun clause. What's the order? That in case you have both adjective phrase and prepositional phrase, or noun clause with adjective phrase, it is said that if they both occur in the same sentence, and this is after the noun, pay attention, usually the phrase comes before the clause. Look at my sentence. The doctor in the health center who have examined my daughter's eyes. The doctor, this is the subject. In the health center, this is the phrase, prepositional phrase. Who have examined my daughter's eyes. This is all the noun clause. And by the way, this sentence needs completion. You need to talk some more about the doctor. But my focus here is on the order of these modifiers. And as we said, they are following the noun which they are modifying. Whom they modify? They are modifying the doctor. The second modifier is else. It's a modifier which means more or other. And actually, it follows the word that it modifies. And this word can be a question word like where, which, what. For example, when you say where else, which else, what else, or it sometimes follows indefinite compounds. Indefinite compounds like someone else, somebody else, somewhere else. This is what indefinite compounds mean. Right. The last one is indefinite compound when it is modified by an adjective. In this case, it is not else, it is an adjective which modifies the indefinite compound. You can say something wrong, something important, something interesting, or anything important, nothing important, or whatever. Okay? Now I am arriving to the end of my presentation. I do hope you will find it useful. If you need to focus on one information rather than the other, just go back in this video. And this is just a description for the chapter. In our lecture, we are gonna give more examples, and then we do exercises around this topic. Thank you very much.